On this channel, we do everything we can to give you the most information about projects we can. And today we're bringing in an expert Ethereum developer to tell us the technology side of Ethereum and maybe some of the problems it might face in the future. But we're also going to talk about between Cardano and DOT, which one's got the best chance to knock off ETH. Let's get it. BitSwap is the hottest new way to trade tokens. Crawling all the top decentralized exchanges, BitSwap gets you the very best price and value for your trades. BitSwap is changing the game. Try it now at bitswapdex.io. Hey everybody, today I'm joined with a real live Ethereum developer who also has great knowledge of Cardano. We're going to get the inside scoop on the battle between these two smart contract giants, and who knows, we may talk about Polkadot. We're joined here by Hashoshi. How are you doing today?
Living the dream. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's going great. Now, we say this every time we do a collaboration, but we're going to say it again here. A lot of people don't know this. This was my first collaboration. The first person on YouTube I ever talked to in crypto. How many subscribers did we both have? Do you remember?
We had like 300 subscribers. We got in touch via Gmail in the old bitboy and hodl at gmail.com.
That's right.
days.
That's right. Now, at that time, let's be fair here. I had 450 subscribers and you had 300. Okay.
Hey, fair.
I'm just saying. So,
hey, I've always been chasing, man, and now the race is over.
You were ahead of me at one point. Yeah,
there was a short period. Yeah.
It was kind of like Bitcoin going above 40K, you know, Hashoshi getting ahead of me, and then except you didn't go down. So glad to be joined by you. You are a developer and you got a lot of inside knowledge about things. Since you're on that side of things, everybody knows I'm not a developer. I don't get into the coding, and that's not how I got into crypto. Mm-hmm. But a question a lot of people have is Cardano versus Ethereum. And then, do you know much about Polkadot? We touch on that at the end, maybe?
Yeah, we can touch on that. I have some knowledge of Polkadot.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start with Ethereum versus Cardano. I did a recent video on talking about the price action of these three projects and saying how, I think Ethereum is probably the best, especially for new investors. But this is a little more about the back end of things. Tell us a little bit from the developer perspective of how Ethereum compares to Cardano.
That's a good question. Well, I think the first thing anyone who is an Ethereum loyal fan would say is, right now, here we stand. Ethereum has proven that it can be used to build high quality dApps. You have DeFi, really popular, things like Uniswap, Ethereum focused, and the foundation of those protocols are Ethereum. No doubt, Solidity has existed for a long time as a programming language that you can use to build smart contracts and make cool stuff. No doubt. The developer tooling ecosystem is also great in Ethereum, and the community is great. Cardano, though, was designed, I guess, from the very beginning as sort of a counterpoint to the way that Ethereum works, which is move fast and break things. Let's just create cutting edge stuff and get it into people's hands. Whereas, Cardano, on the other hand, said, let's create a really safe, predictable, functional programming language that's a lot different than Solidity. It's formally verified, which basically means it operates predictably in a simplified sense. And so they've been working on that for a long time. And we're now getting to the point where Cardano is about to drop all of that functionality for smart contracts onto the world in the form of their development era that they call Goguen. And so the initial argument is, well, Ethereum has it and has had smart contracts for a long time. Cardano doesn't even have it yet, so there's no comparison. But I think in this space, we're so early still that it's fair to talk about what is, what will be, and what the landscape's going to look like 5 years from now, and where people want to build stuff. So that's my initial take. I'll let you react.
Yeah, so I think that's very interesting, and this is kind of how I think of it, which is it's much easier to build a house from scratch than it is to build a house and remodel it.
Correct.
To get it how you want it to be, right? Now, obviously, building a house takes a long time, but if you build it and then you got to re-gut the whole thing and kind of do it, then that's not going to be optimal. And it's much easier to just start with a foundation that's strong and then build up. And I feel like Ethereum right now is the house that's getting the remodel, and Cardano is the house that's almost finished right now. It's almost been built. Everything is where they want it to be. So here's the only issue, though, which is, for the people that love Cardano from an investment perspective, I mean, I don't know if it's going to get any real advantages from that standpoint during this bull run. But when we project out 5 years down the road, I'm really like kind of more bullish on Cardano than I am Ethereum for that very reason. What do you see? And I know you don't talk about price a lot on your channel. I understand that.
Less, yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I was just saying less, yes, but
Yeah.
you know, it's always in the conversation.
It's impossible for it not to be. How do you see, as from the developer standpoint, the relationship between the quality of these projects and the price and you know, you don't have to predict a number, but just in the prediction for the future prices of these, what does that have to do with the actual quality of what's being built?
Yeah, I think if you carry that same analogy that you were talking about before, like, you know, rebuilding a house, gutting it and building it from scratch, which is largely what's happening with ETH 2.0. And then someone who looks at this house that was Ethereum and says, let's build every element of that in a way that we think is better. There are two different challenges. Ethereum's main advantage is they have the builders and the buyers already. People are already invested in the Ethereum ecosystem. That's people like me, someone who learned Solidity early on, someone who's built dApps, someone who, you know, has done consulting in regards to how to use Ethereum to solve problems. And then you also, though, have on the other side is that those builders and those buyers need to, I guess, not get locked out because of the temporary performance limitations that they're going to have before ETH 2.0 is there, right, and ready. Whereas with Cardano, you've got this interesting thing where they're going to have the tools and they're going to have the sort of the runway to build really cool stuff that you probably can't build on Ethereum 1.0, as they call it. The trick is going to be to get the builders and the buyers. You need the users who are going to use the dApps and the developers who are going to build the dApps. And you create this virtuous cycle where more users means more dApp developers, which means more users, and it keeps going round and round and round. That is the difficult part. And I think it's interesting to look at case studies like Elrond, who have really, really solid tech fundamentals, right? Really solid. And, you know, as someone who's a fan of technology, that's how I got in this space. I really like what Elrond's doing. But they also have a tough path ahead because the hard part isn't building the tech. That's hard enough. The hard part is getting dApp developers to build stuff and then users to come to bring more developers. Like, that is the really hard thing, building an active community. It really is.
Well, they say that Elrond has the #2 most engaged community in cryptocurrency outside of which project, you think?
Probably Cardano, barely.
Cardano, good job. He knows his stuff, guys.
Lucky guess.
It shows you know, well, I mean, you had to know it was either that or Ethereum. I mean, Ethereum has the biggest development community, but in terms of engagement from the community itself, I mean, Ethereum by its numbers are probably higher, but in terms of the rate of engagement, it's much higher for those two projects. So it's very interesting that you brought up Elrond. We're very bullish on Elrond. We did a video on this recently. We think it's got potential to get up to the top 10 for sure. Another project that definitely compares to Ethereum and Cardano is Polkadot. Now, here's my 30,000 foot view of Polkadot and how to explain it. It basically solves a lot of the same problems that Ethereum had, that Cardano has. The difference is it's built to be reverse compatible with the entire Ethereum ecosystem. But of course, Ethereum is not compatible to the Polkadot ecosystem. Is that correct?
More or less, yeah. I mean, if you think about Polkadot, it's a play. I think Gavin Wood, who actually was formerly with the Ethereum Foundation, who helped scaffold out a lot of the early Ethereum stuff, including Solidity.
Yeah, so and had a terrible haircut. Terrible haircut.
Had a terrible haircut. But I will tell you, building Polkadot excuses that. And the whole vision is, he basically says it's a bet against blockchain maximalism, which I'm a huge proponent of. You know, people are like, oh, well, if you're really invested in Ethereum, why do you support and like Cardano or Elrond? Yeah. Because I don't think that the world is going to be ruled by one protocol. I think there's room for a lot of these to succeed in an environment that's not mutually exclusive. And Polkadot, I think, and also Cosmos to an extent.
I like Cosmos as well.
It's a bet on a multi-blockchain protocol world, which I think is where we're going. And that's why Polkadot and Cosmos and the other interop projects, even things like Icon, I think have potential, and they should be in the conversation, but not in the conversation in the sense that Polkadot's an Ethereum killer or Cosmos is an Ethereum killer, because I think that rhetoric is just overdone, and it's not. It runs counter to the whole idea of what I think everyone wants and everyone shares the belief in, which is that we need decentralized tech that people can use and that makes the world a better place. Period. Sounds cliche, but.
Well, at this moment, I've just decided, and the people will probably see this, is that this video's title has got to be Hoshoshi reveals the next Ethereum killer. That has to be it, right? That has to be it. So I may or may not use this. People who are here will know by the time they watch. But so, and that brings something up, an interesting idea that I had, which was going to ask you. I guess you kind of just stated your opinion on it, which is, do you believe in one of these winning, or do you believe in a world where all of them share market share? And you obviously, have already answered that, so I don't have to ask it. But I got to ask this. There will be one of these projects that has the most market share. There will be. Every industry in the world, there's one that has the most. If you got to pick between these three, between Cardano, Ethereum, and Polkadot, for the long term, not just, for the next year, but, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years down the road, which one of these has the most market share?
Between inclusive of Polkadot too?
Yes, Polkadot, Ethereum, and Cardano.
I would say of all of them, the most likely statistically in my mind is Ethereum.
Yeah.
And I say that exclusively because as long as they deliver the tech that they're promising, which is by far not a guarantee, right? It's never a guarantee. Building software is hard. They have the intangible things that makes a protocol successful, and they have a mature ecosystem around Ethereum that if they deliver the tech that they're promising, I don't see that they can be fully unseated in a majority way. Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, that's really definitely interesting. So Hoshoshi reveals the next Ethereum killer is Ethereum.
Yeah, right. Really there you go. There's the paradox title that we're looking for.
There it is. So yeah, very interesting. I kind of agree with, most of what you're saying. I think that the interesting thing, like, yes, statistically, I would agree with you that Ethereum should have the front, the first mover's advantage. That's what we see with Bitcoin. It's still there. I think it's going to last. I don't think that first mover's advantage for Bitcoin is going to go anywhere because it's firmly secured itself is basically a gold alternative. So for Ethereum, I think that a lot of the institutional money that's coming in now is coming to Ethereum. I think that could be another advantage that it has. However, the caveat to this would be, if Ethereum 2.0 is not launched, let's say by the next bull run completely, and it still has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
People say it's not going to be fully done until 2023. If the EIP 1559 proposal or a similar proposal does not get passed, because I know a lot of the miners are kicking back on that, I would say that does open up the door for something else. And I would say, I think that after having talks with Charles Hoskinson and interviewing him and listening to a lot of what he has to say, I would say, Cardano has a decent chance. But you're right. It needs Ethereum to stumble, I believe.
Yeah. And I think also it needs, I think that, look, I admire the fact that Cardano has made the move to make a compatible Ethereum virtual machine to run Solidity code in the context of Cardano. Yeah. Great idea. Gives a path for people on Ethereum that want a scalable chain now and don't want to wait. Great idea. But they need to double down on what the vision has been from the very beginning, which is we have created a platform that is different in almost every way than Ethereum, but will also be a means to an end to do the same thing, to build decentralized applications. And I think that might be a differentiator to go to different industries that might not have been willing to touch Ethereum because of the programming style that it has, and capture some of that. I think some of the financial industry, some of the older finance might be willing to step in to the ring of blockchain using something that's, safe and formally verified, using a language like Haskell, which is already out there in the financial world. So just some food for thought. Yeah.
And as everybody who watches channels knows, I love food. So yeah.
Especially food that's composed of thoughts.
That's, some of my favorite. Also food composed of food. Also really good. Okay, Hoshoshi, thank you so much for joining us today. Listen, guys, make sure to go subscribe to his channel, okay? You guys heard it here first. We were about the same when we were back at about 300, 400 subscribers, and now we need to boost him up and get up here with the big boys, because you guys know, when we talk about content, we bring experts on. We bring experts in charts because we are not a solely technical analysis channel. And we also bring experts from the development world. And Hoshoshi is definitely an expert. He's doing it every single day. So thank you for joining us. You guys make sure to go subscribe to his channel. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
That's all we got. Be blessed.
Cheers.
BitBoy out.